and very warm greetings from Law Prep Tutorial on the day of World Wildlife Day. And before I begin with the doubts and the newspaper, the Hindu newspaper has also carried a message for all of us. The message on the front page that see, we have multiple places. For example, when you want knowledge, you have come to a coaching center. When you want recreation, you have YouTube, you have different social media apps. When you get sick, you have a pharmacy. When you want to chill, you have a park, you have places to hang out with your friends, right? You have planes to go to across the globe. But nature, wildlife, flora and fauna have only one thing, which is the forest. They have only one thing where they live, they relax, and their livelihoods, everything about the communities that live around the forest and everyone else who are part of the ecosystem of the wildlife are dependent directly on the forest, right? So it is on us. The onus is on us who consume resources beyond the measure. For example, all of us have recreational means, right? But nature doesn't identify with such things. Therefore, it is on us to ensure that we say no to plastic, live a sustainable livelihood, ensure that we segregate wet waste and dry waste, and at the same time take actual steps on a day-to-day basis, such as if you can walk, take a walk to the place that you have to go. When you go to the grocery store, carry a bag on your own. Don't ask for new bags. All those things are small steps towards a more sustainable livelihood. Climate change is real. We as part of the preparation for the examination study climate change, different treaties, conventions related to it. But beyond that, beyond the life of actually the examination, everyone else has to live on earth, and the forests play an important role in that. So since 2013, we identify March 3 as the World Wildlife Day, and therefore it becomes important for all of us to do our bit to ensure that our forest, flora and fauna sustains beyond our livelihoods, right? Beyond our lives, because here we are being asked to do something more than what we are. And that is the message that the World Wildlife Day wants to spread for all of us. So do take a thought about it. Do make sure that today when you walk out of the room, you ensure to turn off the lights. When you go to a store, you don't consume a plastic poly bag. Say no to a plastic straw. Ensure that you reduce your plastic waste on a daily basis. On that note, I will begin with the doubts. So yesterday we again discussed the US-Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, right? A lot of you still had doubts about it. There is another editorial that talks about it. However, in crux, I will tell you, nuclear weapons can destroy generations, and therefore the threat of nuclear weapon or a country arming itself with nuclear weapons is something of a great deal or a grave importance. Because if Iran acquires nuclear weapons, the enemies or adversaries of Iran will also start doing so. Why did India develop nuclear weapons? Because our adversary China had nuclear weapons. So to attain a detente or a equity in the battlefield, we developed nuclear weapons. And in response to that, our adversary Pakistan developed nuclear weapons, right? So when Iran develops nuclear weapons, the adversaries of Iran, such as Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other countries nearby, will also arm themselves with nuclear weapons. And nuclear weapons are basically the path to destruction of humanity. They are for a reason known as weapons of mass destruction. So the Iran nuclear deal is simple. Understand it in one sentence. It is about US and other countries lifting sanctions, economic sanctions on economy of Iran, and in response, Iran will not enrich uranium or produce nuclear weapons. Simple set. All right. The details about it were given in the editorial yesterday, which I highlighted, and I expect all of you to make notes about that. All right. Related to that was another doubt. What was the Islamic revolution or the Iran revolution in 1979? The 1979 revolution was overthrowing the Pahlav dynasty in Iran and imposing the Qiyamani rule that is there, or the Islamic rule that is there in Iran now, which is a pseudo democracy movement wherein you have the clerics who head the government, and beneath that there is a system of government under it. So the 1979 revolution was to overthrow the monarchy and impose a clergy plus democratic rule in Iran. Alright. Then moving on, other doubts that were there, one of them was about the principle of natural justice, that is Nemo Judex in causa. What does this mean? That you cannot be a judge in your own case. Alright, so this question was put up because yesterday we discussed the CJI and the master of the roster, wherein we discussed two cases, Ashok Pandey versus Supreme Court of India. So the question is, how could Supreme Court represent itself before the Supreme Court judges? So Supreme Court doesn't, the judges don't argue in front of judges. They have amicus curiae, friends of the court, who argue on the principles about interpretation of the office of CJI, and the Supreme Court determine. See, therefore, and as per the constitution, along with that, the Supreme Court has been given the final determining power to interpret the constitution. Alright, so if a certain rule or the position of CJI is interpreted by the Supreme Court in one way, and some years later they interpret it otherwise, they have the authority to do so. That would not be a violation of the principle. It is similar to how the Prime Minister decides that today they want to pursue one economic policy over the other, whether they want to undertake disinvestment or have more public sector undertakings. It's about how they invent or imagine their role is one that is important. Alright. Then moving on, another doubt was about related to the Golden Globes Awards, right? So Golden Globe Awards are something of relevance in relation to award section. Alright, so therefore you need to make a note about the winners in different categories, and that was about it. Alright, don't have to mug up nominations within that. Alright, category and the winners, that is all that we need to know about them in case a passage related to them comes. In other examinations apart from CLAT, there is a likelihood that some kind of question could be put up from there, which is a singular question, that is, who won the award in the best movies category, which TV series was awarded the best drama. Alright, so those things, that is something that you have to keep in mind. Alright, now we'll move on with today's newspaper. So on the front page, for some indigenous tribes, the jungle is the answer to their every need, the only answer. Don't take it away from them. Alright, this is in light of the theme of World Wildlife Day for 2021. Alright, who sets the theme for World Wildlife Day? It is the United Nations General Assembly. Alright, the theme for this year, forests and livelihood, sustaining people and the planet. Because if we sustain the livelihood of tribal communities, that means forests are thriving, and if forests are thriving, that means the ecological balance of that region is better, and overall the atmosphere of the climate will be better. Alright, moving on the front page of the newspaper. Alright, so the vaccine uptake has increased. That is something that is beneficial. If you have members of your family who have comorbidities from 45 to 59 age, or people above the age of 60, do ensure that you ask them to take up COVID-19 vaccination. Alright, you can register them from the COVID portal on the website. Alright, now related to that was another question: how could the Prime Minister get a Covaxin jab as it has been approved under emergency use? Emergency use is basically the purpose that right now we don't have time to do detailed analysis of the vaccines, ensure their long-term, short-term benefits. Therefore, it is better that you approve it right now for different categories of people. All right, so under emergency use without real concrete proof, you approve a vaccine for usage. So emergency use does not mean that you will not use the vaccine. All right, it means that despite lack of research, you are willing to use it because the benefits outweigh the risk. All right, so therefore the Prime Minister and a lot of people across the country have taken the Covaxin, or someone have taken the Covishield. Both of them have been approved under emergency use. All right, then Sri Lanka has announced a new port construction. This is a greenfield project that now Japan and India will be investing in. All right, a month ago they ousted India from the East Container Terminal, which was part of the treaty between India, Japan and Sri Lanka. Now they have given India and Japan another port which is on the western, all right, which is nearby to this. It is the Western Container Terminal. This is a greenfield project, and India and Japan will get up to 85% stake in this terminal, and they have to build this from scratch. All right, then moving on the front page, nothing. So the spectrum allocations took place. Jio, which was the newest entrant in the market, had to obviously acquire far more spectrums than the others, so which is reflected in the money that they spent on each spectrum. All right, then moving on, nothing of real note on the other pages of national news. Here you see another headline from the DDA floats land use change for PMO project. So under Central Vista project, different land use has been changed. All right, so now all we needed to focus on was the Supreme Court judgment, which we discussed in depth. All right, a link to that discussion will be there in the description box today. So if you haven't checked that out, do make sure that you give a quick revision to it today. All right, so moving on, this headline, different changes within it are not relevant. I am reiterating again, the main judgment becomes more important for us to know. All right, then moving on the editorial front. So the main editorial, The Anatomy of a Spring Ceasefire, highlights how the history of LOC between India and Pakistan, and how the ceasefire agreement is something that can be beneficial or not, how much it will be sustainable. There is hope that this one will be a real game changer in acquiring peace at the border, so that other discussions about dispute resolution regarding Kashmir and any other issues between India and Pakistan can be resolved. All right. The editorial also gives a history about when this agreement was signed, and it is based on what? It is based on the 1971 Shimla Agreement and the 1973 border agreement that they had made. All right, so this was reiterated in the 2003 ceasefire agreement, and now in 2021 we are reiterating that we want to abide by the 2003 ceasefire agreement. All right, so those are things, there is nothing of real note in this apart from these details. Then on the left hand side, back to the future. The economy may have emerged from the woods, but challenges loom. This is about the discussion of Indian economy. Which sectors have done better, which have done poorer. All right, so what we all know right now, India's economy in Q3 grew by 0.4% in GDP terms and 1% in gross value added terms. What does this mean? Because now we have positive growth, Indian economy is out of recession. But there are certain sectors that have performed poorly even now, such as exports and construction sector, and other sectors such as service related non-commercial sectors such as hotel services, other tourism related services. They have not taken a positive note. They have been on a overall downturn in the Q3 sector. All right, now what do we need to understand from this, and how is this relevant for us to understand? For two things. One, the reason why our overall growth has not been that high, because in terms of revised estimates, so one is preliminary data that is announced. All right, then there are revised estimates that are announced. So those things then are accumulated and the final picture comes out. So overall Indian economy will throughout this year, which is 2020 to 2021, will contract by up to 8% based on how we perform in Q4, alright. Then second thing that we need to know is that more needs to be done for Indian economy to finally go to a positive growth, alright. This mere 1% is nothing because we are a developing country and there is a huge population that is still in abject poverty, alright. So therefore this needs to be done more. The data of how much we grew is not relevant. How much we contract is something that you need to know, which is as per estimates now Indian economy will contract by 8% in this fiscal year, alright. Then moving on, reviving the Iran deal. Biden needs to seal the nuclear deal before hardliners gain upper hand in Iran. This is in response to new elections that are due in June in Iran. And Hassan Rouhani, who is considered a moderate, is ineligible to run for office again because in Iran you cannot run for 3 consecutive terms. You have to have a gap, alright. So now there is renewed urgency in reviving the Iran nuclear deal, because if hardliners gain a prominence in Iran, then the revival of the Iran nuclear deal will be unlikely, is what is supposed in the editorial. So we have to see what US and Iran actually do. Steps have been taken, talks have been started, but whether they actually revive the deal or not is of consequence for us to wait and watch. The details about the background is something we already know. Speculations are not relevant, alright. What we now need to wait is what actually happens, alright. Then moving on, the second op-ed, the survey as a policy with ideological overtones. This is recognizing that the economic survey puts forward growth and percolation of growth to the downturn or the population at large as the main focus, rather than eliminating poverty as a concept, alright. This is in response to chapter 4 of the economic survey, which is inequality and growth, conflict or convergence, an effort to identify the correct policy objective for India. This is recognizing that, see, the editorial is a criticism of this, that see, poverty is a multi-dimensional concept. There is a multi-dimensional poverty index that is produced by Oxfam. That is something that is also important for you all, and we had discussed this in December, alright. So I hope you made your notes about this. Then apart from that, the editorial discusses how this pattern in a society that is largely unequal is impossible, because more inequality creates more distrust, and as there is more distrust, there is less chance of this wealth being circulated among the larger population, alright. So, but what we need to know is the overall policy and what it is, alright. So one, economic survey is not binding on the government. What is suggest or what it is hoped in the economic survey does not matter, until what becomes most important is the union budget. Those are the real policies of the government, alright. Then moving on, the second one, the path to peace in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian crisis with related to Tigray area or the TPLF is something that we discussed at length in November and December. This editorial is then linking about how there now needs to be a reconstruction plan in conflict regions, because if that is not done, violence will recur in the region, alright. The entire Ethiopian country along with the strategic area of Horn of Africa can be affected if this is not resolved, alright. So therefore there is hope of how it could be done is what the editorial talks about. You all need to revise yourself on the TPLF and the overall situation in Ethiopia and the conflict there, which we discussed, and the link to that will be in the description box so that you can revise it today itself, alright. Then moving on, on the left hand side, the myth of apolitical campuses. This is analyzing why university students should be more aware about what is happening in the country and the politics related to that. All right. Then on the left hand side, recalibrating relations with European Union. This is talking about how India and European Union need to get a trade deal signed. This hope or editorials like these are written regularly, but there is limited movement that actually happens on the trade and investment agreement that was started way back in 2007. This is like a free trade agreement between India and European Union, all right, so that the untapped potential between India and European Union could be realized, all right. Just like United States, Europe also has a generalized system of preferences. Certain products of India categorized within that, certain do not. Therefore, there is hope that this free trade agreement should be signed so that this can be done. As this has not been done, only the trade name, the agreement name is something that you have to keep in mind, which is India's negotiation for a broad-based trade and investment agreement. All right. Then moving on, the data point is highlighting the lack of personal loan uptake, which will be reflected in another headline that we will be discussing in the economic section. All right. Then on the left hand side, following up from the front page related to India, Japan, Sri Lanka, Western Container Terminal, there is one more thing that you need to make a note of, which is about that some kilometers away from the new terminal that India and Japan will be building is Colombo's International Container Terminal. Who has built it? This is built by China, all right, and it holds up to the China's Merchant Port Holding Company Limited holds 85% stake in that. India and Japan will also get equivalent 85% stake in the Western Container Terminal that they will be building. This proposal is something that is more beneficial for India than the Eastern one, because then India can oversee what China is also doing in the region. All right. This is hope that this agreement has been granted to India and Japan in anticipation that India will support Sri Lanka in the HRC vote that is due. We have discussed what is up for vote, and we will discuss it once the vote actually takes place, all right, which is sometime due this week in March, all right. Then moving on the other national news, nothing of real note apart from politics. As you know, this will increase far more because the overall assembly elections get closer, all right. Along with this, there is another news about two things. One related to the new intermediary rules, all right. So the rules, a notice was issued to two journalists in Manipur who run the Frontier Manipur newspaper, all right. They were served notice by the local city magistrate. However, the next day itself, the ministry from central government issued that those notices have been withdrawn, and local authorities or district magistrate, though they are not capable of issuing guidelines under this, all right. They cannot issue notice, only the central ministry can do so, all right. So this is the first impact of the new rules that have started in. However, there is another clarification that comes with them, that only the central government will provide or issue notices for this. Along with this, the Ministry of Home Affairs will be hiring cyber volunteers who will be part of government to flag what content is uploaded and what should be approved, what should not be. This is being called by other people as surveillance. However, we need to keep in mind the policy that Ministry of Home Affairs have started with cybercrime volunteers, all right. All of this is the entire narrative about regulation of social media and OTT platforms. So within that heading, make your notes, all right. Then moving on the other pages, nothing of real note apart from this news, that is Lok Sabha TV, that is LSTV, and Rajya Sabha TV, RSTV, both started in 2006 by the government of India, have now been merged under one entity which will be known as the Sansad TV, all right. And ex-IAS officer, that is Ravi Kapoor has been appointed the Chief Executive Officer for Sansad TV. Alright. Both these TV channels will coexist, but now under one name, and one will provide content in Hindi, one will provide content in English. Most of the content will be same, and when the proceedings of both the houses are ongoing, one will telecast about Lok Sabha, the other about Rajya Sabha, both under the entity of Sansad TV now. Alright. Both these new channels were started in 2006, so make a note about that. Alright, then moving on the international news, more crackdown by Myanmar police, that is something that has become a general talk about. Then along with that, Pakistan needs a legislation to meet FATF benchmarks. So FATF has highlighted that what now Pakistan needs to do to either escape blacklisting or being retained on grey list is that it needs to act on 3 levels. What are those 3 frontiers? Which is about demonstrating that terrorism financing, investigations and prosecution of target person and entities on behalf of the direction, and demonstrate effective implementation of targeted financial sanctions against all designated terrorists. So terror financing, adjudication of those who have been culprits of it, and along with that have an institutional mechanism to ensure that these people do not escape from the law enforcement. Alright, so that is something that Pakistan needs to do under FATF. Alright. Then there is hope who will make the government in Nepal. The crisis is ongoing. The Supreme Court has asked the parliament to meet. So we have to wait and watch what happens in the country. Alright. Then moving on the economic front, there are 2 news that needs to be noted down. That one, private investment is missing, notes RBI article. The hope of the budget, union budget, is that overall private investment will rise. But that is something that is not happening. And along with that, there is another news, which is from the 10th edition of Huran Institutes, that is Huran Global Rich List 2021. This is an organization based in Shanghai and Mumbai and was founded in 1999. This report was founded in 1999 by the current chairman Rupert Hugenberg. Alright. They make a list about the people or the billionaires in the country. India retains the 3rd rank in the number of billionaires. So the main editorial that we discussed on economic survey, that if there is growth, wealth will percolate on the people. But despite India having the 3rd highest number of billionaires in the country, we also retain the rank of highest concentration persons under abject poverty. So this hope that growth will percolate into wealth needs to be seen. However, Mukesh Ambani now lists the Reliance group chairman is now the 8th richest person in the world as per the Huran Global Rich List of 2021. Alright. So the organization who does it, when it was started, who started it, all of those. 1999, Rupert Hoogworth, and the list by Huran Institute. Alright. That is it from the economic front. On the sporting front, nothing of real note for us. On that note, I will end for the day, and make sure that you make your notes about the new Western Container Terminal from Sri Lanka. Along with that, make updated lists about information on the Sansad TV, that is Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha TV being merged, and the Huran Global Rich List of 2021. On that note, if you have any other doubts related to anything, make sure that you put them in the comment section and I will be happy to address them. Thank you so much. And lastly, clarification that the revision series will start soon. Don't worry, the announcement about that will be done in appropriate time. We know that you all want it and they are in pipeline. By the weekend it will be up. So thank you so much. If you like the work that we are doing, please give this video a thumbs up. We really appreciate your overall experience and how this affection helps us strive for more. So do give the video a like, and if you are new to the channel, do subscribe.